Everybody, I'm Ash. This is Jack from Quantified Performance. What we're going to be talking about today is general purpose optics. It's been a thing. The general purpose division has been around for a while. We kind of started off with some basic guidelines. We had to do some adjustments a couple years ago because of this Vortex 1 to 10 caused us a little bit of issues. So what we want to do today is we want to go through general purpose optics, our thoughts on it, and where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was that optic, and then this optic, which has become more of a point of discussion, inside the community of like what is a general purpose optic. And our initial intent when we started making these divisions, when general purpose was truly a general purpose gun. If I go to an average guy's closet that's going to, or an average guy's safe, that's going to be competing in these matches, what's he going to have in there? I think we made a little bit of an error early on with the 18-inch barrel, but the optic thing has really been pretty consistent throughout what we've been doing.
Right.
And we wanted to frame that, we didn't want to make it so strict that it had to be a 1X bottom, because there was the CQBSS, which is a 1.1. There are a couple other ones in the like mid price range area at the time, the 1.2s, up to 1.5s.
Right.
And most of those would go up to about 8 power, and that was kind of where it stayed. And then, the 1 to 10s came out. And we kind of went to look back at the rule book, and said that we judge them individually when they came out.
Right.
So this is kind of like a talk of like what is that criteria we're looking at of does something fall inside of general purpose if it does have a lower powered, but maybe it's not a 15 or 16 power top end. Like this, it's a 2.5 or 2 to 10. And like if you look at it. It looks generally like what you'd see in a 1 to 10 size. Yep, it's small. It's a cool little optic. But it does break that bottom end of 1.5 or really 1X. Which is really the intent of it.
Right.
And it's what is going to be the thing. Once we just establish that division, once we establish those parameters for the optics of what's the thing that can be dropped into that is outside of the common optics in that area.
Right.
Like what are you looking at when you look at a 1 to 10? It's like generally speaking, because that's it's a low power, it's going to have a small objective. Generally doesn't have a parallax correction, which is important. While not crucial. I'm not saying that a 1 to 10 optic needs a parallax adjustment, but an optic that has a parallax adjustment does provide an advantage over the vast majority that do not have a parallax adjustment. And it's the locking turrets really I don't think is a category that would put me outside of saying that's a general purpose optic.
Right.
Just because they lock or they adjust or you can come back to a zero stop. There are several 1 to 10s, 1 to 8s that have those features. So that's not really a criteria. And it's the 2 power. It does blow the 2 power bottom end, or the 1.5 bottom end. And that kind of sets it into the precedence of once you let that slide, how much further do you go?
Right.
And I don't think the answer is, okay, well, it can be above a 1.5 as long as it tops out at 10 or below, because we made it at 8.5.
Right.
And the 8.5 allowed some of those fixed powered optics to come and play inside that area, that are applicable to that is a thing that, somebody might have. It's not up to that higher level, large objective, parallax, some more dedicated features to precision optics. And part of what drove that to me, when we were creating a division, is I really distinctly remember that stage out at Rock Castle. We were shooting from the barn, and there was like a 300-yard, like quarter size IPSC at like 300.
Right.
But it was just like all by itself.
Yeah.
There was no berm around it. It's like it was like at the crest of a hill, so like your misses where you could not see them. But if you had a good optic with good glass and you pulled that parallax back, you'd be able to spot your trace.
Right.
And if I can catch that trace, that was giving me advantage over, had I been shooting something like a 1 to 10. And that does come up, being able to see those things to more specifically adjust that optic to optimize performance in that area in a more dedicated and specific task orientation of the use of the optic. And I believe that this sits just outside of that threshold.
Right. And general purpose was, we come from military backgrounds. So general purpose, from that perspective was something that I could use all the time. General purpose. I can go I can be good in CQB. I can be good in trenches. I can be good in houses. I can be good outside in the yard. I can be anywhere that I'm doing, generally from 0 to 600 or whatever the effective range of the weapon system is. So the optics are kind of in that same thing, right? So the Vortex 1 to 10, really good at 1 power, right? Pretty good at 10 power, pretty solid optic for what you're getting. The Night Force, same thing. I can generally use those pretty much everywhere,
Yep.
right? I can go wherever and not be out of place. Yes, there's some compromises, there's some eye box, there's some things that are some weight, some things that are low power variable optic specific, right? But and that's the whole purpose of the division, right? Is to something that's there. So when you start looking at, just like Jack was talking about with the 2 to 10, I might not want that gun. We fought that. We did 4 power, fixed 4 power. We fought wars with it. It worked well. There was weirdo things that you had to do, and you had to learn to be able to be good without optic and CQB, right? With the ACOG. So that's why it kind of falls out. And what I've got right here is a US Optics. It's a 1.8 to 10, right? So this is not a general purpose optic. This has parallax adjustment, just like that. Has parallax adjustment, has good turrets on it that are adjustable, has a decent reticle in it, big objective lens, and it's getting more light in there. It does pretty good things. That's a fairly close to general purpose, just like the 2 to 10 has.
Yeah.
It's close to general purpose. I can use those in most places. That if I throw a red dot on top, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Right. I can do everything. But I'm having to do. You see where I had to add that thing on there for that CQB roll.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's just kind of where we're steering the optics. The other thing that we don't want is we don't want new technology to be cut out.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be one of those places that doesn't allow people to use optics for 5 or 10 years because they don't want to change the rules. We want people. If somebody makes a 1.4 to infinity, I want them using it.
Yeah.
Right. I want it just to go straight in there. And then we'll see if in a year or so, we'll see if there's some huge advantages with that scope.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
It's just like caliber.
Right.
It's the same reason why we don't limit calibers per division. Like, if it works, if it fits inside of the box, that's a competitive item. Coming back inside of this guy, it's like, just because that's not applicable to a GP optic doesn't mean it's not going to be an excellent practical optic.
Right.
It's small, it's light, it's fast. You can dial down to 2 and you can really run those close range stages. It's like that's that middle point for that. Like, do we need to have 25 power top end in practical precision to be competitive?
Right.
And I would say, well, it depends on a lot. I mean, like this guy right now, I'd say is limited because of the reticle.
Right.
I've heard from Loophole that more reticles are coming. I think I'm very excited about that. I don't think the reticle itself is really the limiting feature either, though. To be very frank. It is. What is that system, and what is it? What you have to look forward to? What can this become?
Right.
Like the March 1 to 5 or 1.5 to 15 or whatever's coming out. Fine. That sits inside of the intent of the division, and I think to limit that one, to specifically exclude that, would be the exact same thing of letting the wrong thing in.
Right. And that's what we looked at, because when the 1 to 10 came around, it was outside, because at the time the top end was 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what we were putting out. 1 to 10 came around. Right. Looked at it, and the judgment that I made, and some people didn't like it, the judgment that I made, because if you look at this optic, it's got cap turrets. The reticle in it, there's a couple choices, but it's got a mil reticle in it that goes to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You got 10 mils that are in here. It's not impossible, but it's less intuitive to dial this. Where if it had good turrets on there like that, same thing with the Night Force. If it had turrets that were just like on this US Optics or on the Loophole, then that was kind of what I looked at for an advantage. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a point system, and we're still working through that. Basically, we're looking at this one. Does it have turrets that are easy to dial? Yes. Does it have parallax adjustment? Yes. Does it have these things? And that's kind of what we're looking at. Like, that's kind of the criteria that we're going to be putting out. We're going to be, basically codifying that as we go through it, because it's a debate. Every optic that comes out, we have to look at it, and we have to go, and we have to decide whether it fits our intent of general purpose. And that's one of the cool things about owning it. And that's one of the pain in the ass things about owning it, is we have to literally look at these things, get them in hand, shoot them, see if there's an advantage to this, just like the Vortex fire control.
Yep.
When that or the other system that Magpul's working on with those guys, when that comes in, we have to get it on the range. We have to see if there is a huge advantage to that, right? And we've already played with the Vortex one, so that's just things that we're doing. As of right now, the Vortex fire control, if you were able to get one out of the Army, right, and you get it in your hand, that would be a general purpose optic.
Yep.
Right? It still does those things. Is there an advantage to it? Yes and no, right? Yep. But that's kind of what we're looking at, and what we do when these optics come around, and as new tech comes out, we look at it. But we just wanted to kind of lay out our intent, right? Not GP.
Yep.
Not GP. GP. If we had a March one here, that'd be cool sitting there. But that's just kind of what we're looking at. We're not trying to make this. This thing retails for $3,500, right? And that one's about the same with the Night Force one, and I don't even know what that thing costs.
It's a lot less,
right? Yeah. But we don't want you to buy something that's new that suddenly, is not legal anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why we're looking at that, and that's why we're continuously looking at. We're looking at is July, right? And the new season doesn't start until November, right? So we're looking at it now. Just wanted to put this stuff out now, to where if you're buying stuff for next year, that you kind of know the intent that we're doing and that we're going for, and how we're trying to basically skin this cat.
Yep.
And every time somebody puts out a new optic, we got to go through it. But that's what we want. We could just lock it down and just hope for the best. And but that's not what we're trying to do. Like I say, with everything from caliber to magazine choices. Somebody puts out an 80 round magazine that works really well. Cool, use it. Yep. Right. And we're doing with all the things. 6 Wonder Bread. Some new 6 Wonder Bread cartridge comes out, or some super whatever. We want people to use that, right? Because quantified performance, we're getting the data from that, right? So when somebody says, "Hey, is 7 Wonder Bread a good caliber?" I'm like, "Well, I haven't shot it yet, but I have 43 people that are shooting it, and they're all losing."
Yeah.
Right. So, or they're all winning, they're dominating. Yeah. Right. So that's the other intent of the whole company, is to have that background data that's happening, that you guys are providing. You guys are shooting matches, you're doing these things, and we get to do that, and we get to work on that for development side.
Yeah. And evaluating a thing when it comes out is really only if it breaks what the rule boundary already is, and we're looking to see if we need to reestablish that rule boundary,
right?
And that's not going to be a fickle thing that just happens because we heard one guy, or because Loophole said that, hey, we have this optic. Oh, yep, that's totally legal for GP. Like, no, like it falls outside of that category. We can reconsider it. We can put it out, test it. See if the rest of the market says that yes, this is does not provide an unfair competitive edge. While breaking the rules. Like, hey, if you've got something that sits inside of that, and its bottom is 1.5, you can go up as high as you want. You can have anything else on that. We didn't limit that by the rules. So it's really, we're looking at if we need to change a rule to allow more things in. Just like we did for that. That was we had a capped at 8.5. That was an error. We corrected that. We evaluated it. We rewrote the rule book pretty much specifically for that. For the last iteration, along with the barrel length change, but other than that, the rules are pretty open. They're not excessively constrictive. We want people to be trying new things, be evaluating if they're good or not. And if we happen to see a whole lot of March, 1.5 to 15s out winning matches, that gives information of where performance is changing. Right. Not saying that we're now going to change that to make that illegal. It's changing the parameters of performance.
Right. And then the other thing that becomes hard, right? And this is thing. So we've got 1X, and if we had a CKBSS here, we have it sitting there at 1.5. This one's at 1.8. This one's 2. So the question becomes, well, what's the difference between 1.5 and 2?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just the 1.5 to 2.
Yeah.
Right. It's the rest of the optic that goes with it, and that's why we're basically we're wanting to kind of lay that out, is because we look at those things, right? So because if 2 is good, there's not any difference between 1.5 and 2. Then what's the difference between 2 and 2.5?
Yeah.
So now we have a huge amount of things that are coming in there. What's the difference to 3?
Yeah.
So,
Well, we shot people in Fallujah at 4.
right, we shot, we cleared houses at 4, right? So it just becomes this kind of thing. So we're really wanting 1, right? That's kind of the objective. Threshold is 1.5.
Mhm.
And as we stray farther from that with other features on the scope. And so, that's just kind of, we wanted to spend a couple minutes. We don't want to go too long with this thing. So we just want to spend a few minutes kind of laying down how we look at these things, what we're looking at, and do some things of what we can do to make these guns run better, get the most performance in that general space. We got, and then that way the optics companies can look at it and just be like, because they can see what people are doing. They can look at it. They can see who's buying it. They can see who's at performance. They can look at those things, and they can make good decisions based off of what you guys are doing too. So that's what we're just trying to get that lined up. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much the things to look at is, in the 1X plus, to N, they are very popular because they work very well for so many things. We do not want to make that non-competitive inside of the division that it's specifically intended for.
Right.
So that's really the closing thought of, it is about reflecting the use of the item that's coming out. It is not in order, an effort to make that division score better.
Right.
It's to use what you have, to use what is applicable across the breadth of use, and that's why the other divisions do not have that cap.
Right. Yep. So there you go. That's general purpose optics. Just for the record, the rules are it has to be 1.5 or below, and then to infinity, or fixed power below 10,
8.5.
8.5. Fixed power below 8.5 to be general purpose. Rules are at www.quantifyperformance.com. There's a cool little PDF that you can download. And if you have any questions, reach out. Everybody have a good day.